Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with a Total War Warhammer video. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to discuss the top 10 quality of life changes that we need in Total War Warhammer. A big thank you to our buddy Torbis for helping us compile this list. He's been a great help to the channel lately and his channel's linked below. But without further ado, let's begin. Starting off with our 10th slot is more music. The composers behind the Total War Warhammer scores are doing an amazing job. The music blends very well with the game, especially in regards to ambient noises, battlefields, or just general campaign stuff. The only problem with it is that there is not enough and becomes rather repetitive very quickly. There aren't a lot of original tracks, which does become boring very quick, and unfortunately it leads to a lot of players muting the music altogether and using a playlist from YouTube. Which is a massive shame, to be honest, because the music is that good, and just a few more tracks per race could make all the bigger difference. Moving on to our 9th spot, we have a weather system. So in the Total War Warhammer world, the weather doesn't seem to change much unless you're traveling to different countries or continents. In most cases, it just seems like a bright and sunny day, which kinda kills the mood a bit. It would be really cool if we had the option to wait and fight at night, or had interesting weather systems which might change the outcome of the battle. For example, monsoons in Lustria, desert storms in Araby, or maybe even a chaos warp storm in a random province every now and then. These would affect your field of view and make it a bit more difficult in the battlefield for you. Some minor visual changes in regards to weather would really change the look and feel to a lot of battles. Not everything will feel exactly the same. Going on to our 8th spot, we have settlements changing skins when changing owner. Right now, when you take over someone else's settlement, you just take over their architecture and all that, and yeah, it gets a bit lost. This gets a bit weird, especially when orcs take over, for example, Bretonnian cities. It doesn't have to be a complete overhaul, but just some minor changes like adding in some art assets, destroying some buildings and putting in more orky feels to it and so on. This would really make it feel like the orcs had actually taken over the city and have turned it into a little fighting pit. The same could be said, for example, if Bretonnians would take over an empire city, they would hang loads of heraldry banners all over the walls and buildings and so on to show that they're in control now. Small visual changes like this might not seem like a lot, but it will make you feel like you are expanding your empire and not just temporarily occupying the cities. For our 7th spot, we have the option to toggle for flying and landing for any units that can fly. So technically this is 2 points in one. Firstly, certain units such as Vargheists, dragons, zombie dragons, terrorgeists and so on should be given the option to toggle between flying and landing. It's something very minor, and in most cases you'll want them in the air, but there might be a time that you'll actually need them on the ground. Say for example having your beast trying to hold a specific choke point, and unfortunately sometimes when you make your dragon try and attack something, it might overshoot, fly off ahead a little bit, or just go somewhere you don't want it. A personal example here is when I've sent a dragon to try and charge a unit of swordsmen. For some reason it's flown a bit ahead and charged the back of the unit and managed to get itself surrounded by spearmen which proceeded to kill it. But the main reason this has been requested by people is for the chance to see winged legendary lords being able to fly. For example, the Lord of Change and Malagor, which should be able to fly, both of them are in the game already, and many other potential characters, lords and heroes such as the Bloodthirster of Khorne, Valkyr the Bloody, and many others. Personally, I would just love to see a winged demon Prince of Khorne being flanked by 2 Bloodthirsters as they fly into battle. I mean, how cool would that be? But for our 6th spot, now we have the review of settlement sizes. A number of settlements in Total War Warhammer are actually very famous in lore, such as Mordheim, Karakate Peaks and so on, but most of them are treated as generic settlements. Some as minor settlements and others as provincial capitals, but they're treated the same way as all other minor settlements and provinces. A large city as famous as Mordheim should have 6 slots. A massive Karak such as Karakate Peaks should have 10. It would just give the player more reasons to actively seek and capture these locations. But whilst we're on the topic of settlements, we're going on to our 5th spot. More settlements in certain regions. The Total War Warhammer map is very nicely filled out, to be honest, but there are certain regions, specifically the Badlands, which is very barren. Areas where you'd see many orcs such as the Badlands, the regions of the Border Princes, and the Tomb Kings, they are very empty. Settlements tend to be very far apart from each other, which feels like a hassle more than anything else. Just adding a few extra settlements here and there, as they've been doing in the areas of the Empire, can drastically improve that. For our 4th spot, we have being able able to reskill lords and heroes, especially those of legendary lords when we confederate with a faction. So have you noticed when you confederate with an allied faction, the AI tends to randomly place skill points. Generally this isn't much of an issue early game, as you still have quite a few more skill points to be able to acquire. However, late game, it does become a bit of a problem considering the fact that you won't be able to tailor your lord to your specific playstyle. Or the AI has placed all its skill points in just all the wrong places, meaning that all the time that you spent trying to confederate with this faction just to get the legendary lord has been kind of pointless, as the lord itself is not tailored for endgame. Being able to reskill the lords after confederating with them would just make it so much better and more worthwhile to confederate. Moving on to our third spot, we have more settlement variety. This one's a big one. So as it stands right now with the Total War Warhammer series, all the currently live walled settlements are reskin templates of each other. Now don't worry, we're going to get into the siege overhaul soon, but this is in regards to visual aspects and just size in general. All the walled cities are pretty much the same size, there's a few different templates, but generally it's all the same. There is no visual distinction, especially with big grand cities such as Altdorf. These are very famous in the lore and should be drastically different. We have no visual representation of the grand cities, great bastions and massive gates that are known to litter the Warhammer world. And in truth, it's not just the walled cities. The current standard minor settlements don't have physical settlements. You're fighting in open fields. I'll be honest here, this is a bit of a step back. Everything feels exactly the same way now, and there's no uniqueness to these battles. Who else here misses to be able to surround a small village and attack from multiple locations? Or for example, if you were the defender, using the buildings to act as a natural defense. Creating your own natural choke points where you could be able to defend yourself from a better advantage. This to me is the weakest point in the series, not being able to fight in a village or have a grand battle in famously known cities of the Warhammer world such as Middenheim, where it's supposed to be absolutely huge. Instead we're given a basic battle line wall. If everything looks and feels the same, it gets boring rather quickly. And it's not like this system was completely replaced in future games. Total War 3 Kingdoms has access to village maps and so on, so I don't know why it's been omitted from Total War Warhammer. This is something that is definitely needed. Moving on to our second spot, we have the diplomacy overhaul. Yes, we've covered this in a video recently, but it still stands true. We desperately need a change. Total War 3 Kingdoms has massively improved on the trade system and diplomacy system, and it's my hopes that we'll see this being implemented not only in the Warhammer series, but any future Total War games. The quality of life changes there, such as being able to know how far or close you are to getting an agreement to pass, not being forced to join every single war that your ally may start, or lose them as an alliance and potentially have them declare war on you. A better trade system which ultimately feels more rewarding when you initiate trade with other factions, and just a reason to be able to feel like you need to use the diplomacy screen in general. Whereas currently it mostly feels like a chore. You're spending lots of time there guessing instead of getting into the main brunt of the work, and since you're mostly guessing, you're mostly spending your time there instead of getting your armies ready, getting into combat, or just surveying your land instead of trying to get a trade agreement with a faction that likes you, or you're so inclined to believe considering that your relations with them is plus 200, but still you can't seem to get a basic trade agreement or military alliance. For our last spot, we have the siege overhaul, something we've also covered in depth in another video, but this needs to be emphasized once again. Siege battles are currently boring, there's a lot of issues to them, not only because they look all the same, but there's a lot of other issues. The AI has always been lacking in terms of sieges, meaning that you can deploy your forces in certain ways which might spread them too thin, or leave certain areas completely unguarded altogether. They'll generally never sally out and meet you during the siege, so you could even cheese it by destroying the towers that are attacking you and then bombard them until they're weak enough for you to send in your forces at minimal losses. There are certain siege maps too where line of sight can be a bit of an issue, and you can essentially cheese the game if you have a lot of spellcasters, not even losing a single unit. There's a lack of extra artillery in both terms for the attacker and for the defender. As a defender, you can't even use basic artillery and mount them on the wall, meaning that in most cases they're practically useless in this battle. And perhaps the biggest issue for me personally is when you've got units on walls. The front line will look towards your enemy no problem, but the back line for some reason looks into your city. They should be looking out into the battlefield, especially if they're ranged units. They should be able to fire out too, rather than just randomly looking at the town. Now, we are aware that they are looking towards updating the siege system, which is great. They've already started implementing such changes, such as the fort system for the Empire, which works very well, but it needs to be expanded upon further. I know for most of the video I've been sounding very negative, but don't take this the wrong way. I absolutely adore this series. I've got over 3,000 hours into it, and honestly, it keeps getting better and better with each DLC that gets released. So I have nothing but high hopes in regards to the future when it comes to DLC and new content, patches, and fixes. That being said, these were our top 10 quality of life changes that we need for Total War Warhammer. What did you think about our list? Is there any that you would add in instead? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below and let's start a bit of a discussion, shall we? But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below, we have various different social media links such as for Facebook, Instagram and Discord, where you can get in contact with the Great Book team. Also in the description section below is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase when using our special link and also using our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. Honestly, it's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A special thank you to our patrons Gibraltar, LUSC and Ryan Bertsche for subscribing to us at our fame level. Honestly, you guys are super cool. And a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing and commenting on these videos. Honestly, the channel has been growing a lot lately and it's all thanks to you guys, so we really can't thank you guys enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.